day, everyone, especially to our panelists today and to our professor, Dr. Charlinus Cario. We would like to say thank you for being so passionate when finding opportunities for us and giving us honest feedback to help us improve our skill for making this paper. So everyone, my name is Elisa, the group leader of our study. We are the researchers of Eulahio Amang Rodriguez Institute of Science and Technology. Today, we will be presenting to all of you our research study entitled Level Efficacy of Students' Online Learning and its Influence to Skills Development of HRTM, Basis for Intervention Program. Our study will be started by Jamlo for our statement of the problem and conclusion. And it will be followed by Eunice for the method of research used. And next will be Liza May for the data gathering procedure. And next will be Rodney for the statistical treatment of data. And last but not the least, Elisa for the recommendation.
In our statement of the problem, the first question is how do respondents assess the demographic profile based on the following. So we have to know their age and the gender of our respondents. The next statement of the problem is how do respondents assess the level of efficacy of students' online learning in terms of the impact of technology, new ways of learning, technology as a cognitive tool, learning as social activity, the affordance of technology to students' learning, technology as an input device for content, technology as a catalyst to educational transformation, and technology as research tool. The next statement of the problem is how do respondents assess the influence of online learning to the development of HRDM skills in terms of verbal, logical, spatial visual, bodily, kinesthetic, musical, naturalistic, and existential. The next questions in our statement of the problem is are there any significant differences on the influence of online learning in the development of HRDM skills based on the two groups of respondents? And the last questions of statement of the problem is based on the result, what intervention program may be proposed.
For the research method, we use descriptive research to depict the participants in an accurate way. And also descriptive method is all about describing people who take part of the study or a phenomenon. And also we use the survey for the brief discussions and interviews with individuals about the specific topic.
Data gathering procedure. The researcher combined all the questions and made a questionnaire through the Google Forms. And also, the researcher will seek permission from the college dean and subject professors to conduct the study. The researcher also will send a link to the 100 respondents of all third-year students in IRIST or Eulahio Amang Rodriguez Institute of Science and Technology. The researcher collected the survey questionnaire, sorted and synthesized the data. And lastly, the results of the retrieved copies of the questionnaires were tabulated, then the data were analyzed and interpreted through the use of the most appropriate statistical procedure.
Statistical treatment of data, t-test. This was used to determine whether or not there was a significant difference between the assessment of the two groups of respondents on the level of efficacy of students' online learning. It was solved using the formula. X1 means first sample, then X2 means second sample, and S2 variance in the first sample, and the S2 variance is the second sample.
Our conclusion conclude based on the findings presented are the first one is majority of the participants are female with 82.2% of student respondents and the 52.2% and most of those are in the age range of 20 to 30 years old. The second one conclude that it has easy access to information made the impact of technology grow among most age group. The third one, we therefore conclude that students are more motivated when using online learning compared with conventional learning. The fourth one conclusion is the multimedia technology, for example, animation, graphics, sound, and even videos. It contributes to the effective appeal of the material had been a beneficial cognitive tool for online learning. And the last one conclusion is knowing what other members of the group did hello them to know what to do during the online learning is very important to those people who do not feel comfortable when working alone.
So for our recommendation, on the basis of the findings and conclusions, the following recommendations are offered. The first one is become attentive in terms of the changes to be able to adapt quickly to whichever environment. Next is maximize the advantages of technology in personal and academic growth. And lastly is never stop looking for ways to improve and learn about things that require logical and critical thinking.
The problem. What is the demographic profile of the respondents according to their age? Findings is most of the participants are aged 21 to 30 years old, including students and teachers. Conclusions. As a result, we came to the conclusion that the bulk of the students is exactly the right age to start working and are age to start roughly the same age as third-year students and teachers in IRIS Manila are mostly young. Recommendation. The researchers recommend students and teachers to use their age to their advantage and maximize the futures of today's technology for their own growth. Gender. Finding reveals that the majority of the respondents are female. Then conclusions. We therefore conclude that most of the third year students and faculty members are female. Then the recommendations and research recommend that students and teachers to the use their advantage of and maximize the feature and today's technology for their own growth. And respondents assess the level of efficacy of students' online learning. Impact of the technology reveals that the respondents rated as agreed to all. Researchers therefore conclude that the accessibility of information improves helps and impacts that improve learning for both students and faculty members. Then recommendtions from researchers is increase social through interaction through virtual platforms to their potentially motivation. Then new ways of learning reveals that the respondents rated as agree to new ways of learning. Researchers conclude that the saving time on commute will allow students and teachers to have their more time learning new things and maximize productivity. And recommended as a researchers activities to be held more frequently to increase the interest of students and teachers participate and help them work better.
Technology as cognitive tool. Findings reveal that the respondents related as agreeing to technology as a cognitive tool. The researchers therefore conclude that the use of multimedia technology contributes to the effective appeal of the material presented to the students and the faculty members. The researchers then recommend the student and the faculty members to find the most user-friendly web interface that will increase their interest in learning. Next is learning as social activity. Findings reveals that the respondents rated as agreed to learning as social activity. The researchers conclude that the importance of group activities helps the students and the faculty members to know what other members of the group did and helps them know what to do. The researchers recommend group activities to be held more frequently to increase the interest of students and teachers to participate and help them work better. Next is affordance of technology to student learning. Findings reveals that the respondents rated as agreed to affordance of technology to student learning. The researchers conclude that the students are digitally literate but need guidance whenever they work on their tools. The researchers recommend students to utilize search engine tools and be courageous to try something new. Is technology as input device for content. Findings reveals that the respondents rated as agreed to technology as input device for content. The researchers therefore conclude that devices are useful for the application needed to access information and digital setup for work and school. Researchers then recommend investing in gadgets and devices that will increase productivity and efficiency in tasks.
Technology as catalyst of the educational transformation problem. The findings for that is the respondents rated as agree to technology as catalyst to educational transformation. And for the conclusion, the researchers conclude that expanding knowledge and digital skills makes the new system move more manageable and enhance possibilities. And for the recommendation, the researchers recommend students and teachers to make to take rather free lessons like online courses that will help them to learn how to automate and make use of the available resources on the internet. And for the technology as research tool problem, the findings for that is the respondents rated as agree to technology as research tool. And for the conclusion, the researchers conclude that technology allows that learning experiences can reduce human mistakes or accurate data input and output. And for the recommendation, the researchers recommend students and teachers to keep up with technology instead of fearing to be outgrown by man-made technologies. For the verbal problem, the findings for that is the respondents rated as agree to verbal influence of online learning. And for the conclusion, the researchers conclude that self-discipline, confidence, and the ability to make connections are some skills that HRDM students must acquire and possess. And lastly, for the recommendation, the researchers recommend the students and the faculty members to engage more, show up and speak up, and learn how to handle themselves in front of the crowd, no matter what the situation or conversation might be. For the logical problem, the findings for that is the respondents rated disagree the logical influence of online learning. And for the conclusion, the researcher conclude that online learning influenced the participants' logical development. And for the recommendation, the researchers recommend learners and teachers to be more open to discussion and think critically and rationally at all times.
In spatial visual, findings reveals that the respondents rated as agreed to spatial visual influence of online learning. In our conclusion, the researcher therefore conclude that spatial visual are needed to develop the skills of student in remote learning. And in our recommendation, the researchers recommend being more creative and adjusting the acquisition of learning based on one's unique ability. In bodily kinesthetic, findings reveals that the respondents rated as agreed to bodily kinesthetic influence of online learning. In our conclusion, the researcher therefore concluded that the effectiveness of online learning in regards with bodily kinesthetics with both students and the faculty member. In our recommendations, the researchers recommend students and faculty members to participate in group activities, often to enhance the confidence and be able to actively participate. In musical, findings reveals that the respondents rated as agree to musical influence of online learning. In our conclusion, the researcher therefore concluded that the influence of online learning to the development of musical skills of students and the faculty. In our recommendation, the researcher recommends the use of social media to create peer connections. Course rooms can be used to connect, share materials, or just exchange ideas for them to reactivate the development of skills. Interpersonal. So our findings reveals that the respondents rated as agreed to interpersonal influence of online learning. In our conclusion, the researcher therefore concluded that influence of interpersonal development gained through online learning of students and faculty members. In recommendation, the researchers recommend students can increase their understanding by seeing how the material that they learn connects with their everyday life.
Naturalistic. So the finding reveals that the respondents as agree to naturalistic influence of online learning. And for our conclusion, the researchers therefore conclude that naturalistic influence of online learning to students who are studying in IRIST. And for our recommendation, the researchers recommend at least visiting a free access library for students to explore more resources, especially for a specific topic that they need to focus on. And next is the existential. The findings is that finding reveals that the respondent rated as agree to existential influence of online learning. And the conclusion is that the researchers therefore conclude that online learning can influence existential ideologies of students and the faculty. So for our recommendation, when it comes to existential, the researchers then recommend that teachers encourage the students to have a positive mindset. Pressuring situation can be opportunities to grow, learn, and develop new skills. And for our number 4 question is that are there any significant differences on the influence of online learning and the development of HRDM skills based on the two groups of respondents? So the finding is that the findings reveal that both students and the faculty agrees with the influences of online learning in the development of HRDM skills. And for our conclusion, the researchers therefore conclude that online learning can greatly impact one's learning processes in both two groups of respondents. So for our recommendation, the researchers then recommend student and faculty members to take advantage of the positive influences that technology may bring us to today's generation has the largest edge in digital age. And based on the results, what intervention program may be proposed? Well, according to the findings of this study, there is so much potential that technology can contribute to people's lives. Thus, this paper proposes the acquisition of online electronic certificates to learn relevant and useful skills in studying, working, and living in general. The ability to adapt to change is the strength of the participants in this study.